What were you trying to explain to me just now?
That there's a space between there is creating for the sake of achieving a goal, like there's a goal, which like something around like there is an external place to reach that's conditional. It's like when I get there, then I will have this or that, or I will have achieved. So there's creating from that um, perspective. And then there's also creating for like, there is a state of being in which nothing is needed. I found it particularly clear, like after hiking up a mountain, for example, and being on top in a cloud and realizing I need nothing but this. This is it. And I can just um be here forever. Now the trap there is that then nothing gets done. And I think that in life we are here to create. So I'm interested in this space where there is nothing needed, nothing should be done. There's a feeling of everything is already complete, and yet I choose to create. And every day, like now and now, because we create always. So, from that space of being whole and complete, creating from that space, knowing it's unconditional, and there in that is freedom. And it's that it's like there's a tension because something does not exist and we bring it into existence, whether that's something tangible or something abstract. We are made to constantly create. So that's I find interesting because there is, if you create from should I have to get to something. Um yeah, that's one path. Then there is this, I am in such blissful peace, I need nothing. That's another path. The danger there is that stuff doesn't get done, which I find
Yeah,
myself also like I've encountered that this inertia of um or using it to avoid consciously creating, whereas that space between where the tension lives, where we create for the pure joy and sake of it.
I'm not convinced that nothing's getting done. I think what's happening in that state of Wu Wei is that broad strokes of creativity are being created and they may or may not lead somewhere, but it's like laying down the foundation of something. And I also know that in that state, the best work comes out, the most intuitive and universal themes come out because I know I'm not the conscious creator of them in that space because I'm just a vessel or a conduit or something. So I'm not convinced nothing gets created. It's that without the outcome, which is a condition of the first example you gave, there's no clear direction. So it's non-linear, one might say. Maybe it's creating out from the center in all directions and opening possibility. But we know that we have another hemisphere of the brain which would like to um, follow a single path towards a destination. And perhaps I'll speak personally, perhaps my distaste for that way of being is that it is urgent and um, loaded with injunction rather than a freedom of spirit. But they both exist, and in the former that you mentioned, there's a lot more tension, there's a lot more should, and there's a lot more frustration when things don't happen. So it's not as free and joyful, timeless as the second state, and yet they both seem to have their place. What do you make of my first comment about nothing's being created?
Well, I think something is always being created, always. And yeah, I guess it's never that nothing gets created. I think that there is this sense of peace there in the second one. Like, for example, when I'm on a mountain or when I'm just contemplating, gazing at water, these kind of things in which, yeah, everything is already there in that moment. And there is this feeling that I can be content in that forever. But it's like water or sand or it doesn't stay. It's impermanent, that state.
Mm.
Because unless I do choose to become a monk on a mountain, life occurs and demands um outputs. Which is then an interesting game that you can choose to play, right?
Mm.
To begin with that state of
The,
being.
the first one.
No, well, it's kind of at once. Do you have that you experience a full vision of what's possible? Like as if it's like a memory from the future. Uh Similar to a frame from a dream that comes back and contains everything at once, all the elements in place, but it's just really brief. And somehow that's um, how I like to create. And then, as you said, become the conduit, the vessel, the instrument, and not needing to do anything. It's like something sets in motion and I surrender to it. and it is my ego that gets out of the way. There is no like it tells what it wants to become in each moment, and each step becomes clear along the way when I slow down, listen to it, and do not try to force it in any kind of direction. And in creative practice, I found in life and several points in my life, I found stuckness, and it was always because I tried to force my outcome or have control over it, or not trusting, not surrendering. Um, and yeah, it's that way of creating as an instrument that somehow there's always the next action to take, even when that is rest or not doing. it it will it will tell you.
How much of your um, waking time is spent in each respective state of being as a percentage?
Well, that question on my brain explode. I don't understand that question. What do you
Okay,
think?
I'll answer it myself. I'll answer my own question. When I'm living in peace, I still, I believe, spend most of my time in urgent, must do mode, or at least unconsciously wondering, well, what to do next? What am I supposed to do now to move the project forward, the broad project? And I think that's because I haven't made enough money to not have to do that anymore. I think that's it. And that's based on certain um, conditions that haven't been scrutinized and aren't front and present. As I grow older, I realize more and more that there's a sovereignty in the moment that is actually more important than any outcome. If you like, my peace of mind trumps everything. And yet the urgency still predominates. And it's not necessarily negative. I think I'm just conditioned to find something to do and get it done. But of course, that energy is contrary to the timeless um, mode of just sitting down, if you like, in a sand pit and playing and allowing what wants to come out to come out. And so yesterday I was asking myself, because I was very much in between two states, and I had progressed the projects forward to certain points where um, I was either unsure what to do next, or the answer to that question hadn't presented itself. And so I was just sitting in this chair, staring at the walls, looking at the architecture of this room with quite regular urges to pick up my phone and distract myself. But by that point, I was bored of that. And so I was, in the pre digital term, bored. It wasn't unpleasant, but I was genuinely at a loss of what to do next. So I said, well, I'll just go outside and read a book. And I did that, and it was pleasant. And I came back in and tried to do stuff, but everything seemed to have been done. And so I went upstairs and took all my clothes off and went to bed and read a different book. And then 2 hours later, I thought, well, this won't do. It didn't even occur to me to sit down with a piece of paper and a pen until, funnily enough, I read one of your postcards. And I thought, that's really lovely. I'm going to take my paper and pen somewhere, take a little drive, and reply. And then I was back in that nice place again, where everything just happens. So we started this with the tension between those two states. And you're right. It is like when I'm in that dreamy, timeless space where things are just happening, that I ask myself the question, is this allowed? As though there's a higher power that might be judging that power that urges us forward, gets things done and complete. I also think I'm prejudiced against that latter power because it seems to suggest that I'm only free on certain conditions.
What do you mean by that? So when you say allow, am I allowed? Who's the one that decides that?
When a small child is engaged in a game of their own creation, we marvel at the beauty of it, that it's because it's innocent, it's just happening. It's like looking at a bird cleaning itself or looking at a dog on a beach. There's an innocence to it that we envy because there's so much that we have to do in order to get by in life. Boring things that need to be attended to, administration, those sort of Kafkaesque tasks that seem to go on and have no solution. So when I'm at work in a creative project and time disappears and I'm connecting ideas, painting patterns in the sky, I am in that state of playful innocence. I'm free of time and its injunctions. Because there's this deep, elusive urgency that certain things need to be done before I die, there's only a certain amount of time left, and that certain conditions need to be met to satisfy the patriarchal injunctions of this being that sits up there somewhere and is pushing me forward and telling me to do stuff, get on with it, hurry up, and watch out. And I don't know what that being is called. Maybe that's, I don't know. I don't know how to describe that in language. but I know I know that I experience it, and when I do, I don't feel free. I feel like I'm being hurried along by an impatient parent. And so when I ask myself, when I'm at play and I'm creating, and then I return to um, the adult who had been occupied in that way, and I remark on the beauty and the lightness of the whole experience. Maybe it's that voice that says, "Are you allowed to live like this?" But this is how artists live. It has to be like that. Otherwise, you just create something mechanical that everyone understands. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't contain or it doesn't exemplify the universality of being. I know that's a really wishy-washy phrase, but the sort of the primacy of it, the energy that lies beneath all being, the unfolding that is so intrinsically beautiful and wild and savage. I think that's what I'm trying to create. I'm trying to get the essence of it, to share it, because without it, it's just a transactional journey from A to B with like just a series of tasks that need completing. And that doesn't feel very much fun to me to live like that. And yet I think most people do because they have to. But as well, we all have um, a choice to be free from that whenever we become aware of it. And this is something I've always thought comes naturally to you, less so for me. Something I have learned or I became aware of it only recently in life.
Mm. Well, I'm no stranger to that time pressure, urgency demon, which I see like, that emoji with the red face and the beard and the teeth there. But it dressed in a white shirt and brown trousers. That's how I imagine it. It's that sense of time urgency, like hurry, pressure, this thing of okay, I'm I might die tomorrow and I still haven't done this or that. I have to leave a legacy or make my mark onto this world. Like there's something that I have to leave behind, something of value before I go. And that I find is the enemy of my creativity because it's what creates, and I tried creating from that space and it brought unpleasant suffering. Yeah, this whole horrific like self-judgment, terrible work also, everything that came out of that was contrived and totally shit. Now you mentioned the postcards, and it was funny because yesterday I wrote the postcard, and it was the first time I didn't have an idea what I wanted it to be because I found myself in a sort of confused state as to this topic. Like, okay, um, what what does it all mean? And there was this sense, of course, I have to write it about this new project, or what is more true now? And I realized I am conflicted. There is this performative layer that wants to, and then I became aware of, yeah, this like, I want to give a certain experience when I send this off to the one that receives this. And I thought it's also bullshit. Like,
Mm.
why does it have to be earth shattering? So it's became the process itself. I captured what occurred and was the most overthought. I resisted sending it. I didn't want to send it. It felt the most vulnerable. It's the most seen now when I posted it publicly on Substack. And I was like, no, not that one. The other ones are much better. This is just messy. But that's where I was. Messy, internal dialogue around that tension. Like, you have to do this, said the time pressure demon. Because also it's like, I'm a day late with when I normally do that. So a lot of thinking. But it's funny to notice that thinking, to notice that that's not me. That's not who I am.
Mhm.
It's it used to be who I thought I was identified with that pressure feeling, thinking that the thoughts were me. Like I didn't see it as separate from the truth of my being.
All of this is so elusive and difficult to separate out. And I recognize what you said there about when you see that you're entering a certain mode that's contrived. I replied to that postcard yesterday, and the first 15 minutes, the first paragraph of it was like you described, I think, performative, um, crafted rather than just coming out of the center. I still think that there are uses, that both of these states of being have uses at certain times. Um, but there's an element to the extreme right of the second state, the urgent state, that becomes, that has an authoritarian tone. And I think what's happening there is the energy is coming out of fear, and what's being, the warning is, if I don't then, or what will happen if I don't. It's kind of negative and threatening. There's a warning attached to it. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum is the lightness of being, where everything is allowed. It's like the font of output. It's innocent and it's unstoppable. So the book I've just completed comprises reflections on walks taken along a beach in a certain town. And the energy required to get to that state where, well, I'll go back a little bit. I would leave the house in a state of urgency, and I could tell that my pace and my thoughts had intent. Um, but in that state, I'm not seeing anything for what it actually is. I'm seeing it through the eyes of a conditioned adult male in this time. And they are obstacles in some way, or they are just the architecture to the landscape, but they're not important. They don't have a primacy to it. They're incidental to my urgency. And it's not until I would slow down, and what would slow me down often was arriving at the sea and the majesty of it, the enormity of it, undeniable, immense, life unfolding, savage, wild, dangerous, beautiful. It seems to sort of exemplify anything. And then these creatures are living on it and around it in the same state. And that would slow me down, slap me out of that urgent state. And then in slowing down, I would start to see the beauty in the smallest element of that whole one thing, right the way down to grains of sand and ants um, and then there was like a morality which was just removed and everything became neutral and non-judged, unjudged. And then so I'm in that flow state there, and rarely I would glimpse nirvana, to actually be in, become one with that. Difficult to describe this sort of stuff. I'm a part of it. I'm not separate from it. I'm not no longer an observer. And then the sentences would start to form, and it's like I'm plucking them out of the sky. And all I need to do is take a small pocket full of those sentences home. And then I'm like really excited because I'm just going to then craft this thing. And it's going to be based on past thoughts, experiences. I'm just going to weave it all together. And there's only a percentage of it which is actually true to the walk itself. Um, and there's embellishment and there's performance in there. I'm really just having fun with it. I'm like a child with some Lego. I'm just building. And then there's an editing part of it too, where a more censorious perspective is being applied. Um, and where I'm trying to trim away the bullshit, the embellishments, the overuse of language. I think I'm still in the play state there, but there's a tension because I want it to be good. I want it to be seen in the way that I want it to be seen. But the answers to those questions are not always clear to me. Sometimes they need time, and I come back and reflect on it and say, you know what, that's bullshit. That's just shit. But I don't know why it's shit. Um, and I'm going to now admit that I used AI in the last week to help me maintain an authentic voice throughout those pieces. And it helped me be brutal with some of those works, either discard them completely or trim them down hard, because it was telling me in language adopted that it seems like you're doing this, but when you do that, it seems to jar. And so yeah, I really found it helpful to remove bullshit and maintain a voice. Sorry, I suppose I drifted there. Um, just talking about those different states of being. So without being completely at one in the moment, timeless, non-judgmental, I don't get the fruit seems out of reach, and I don't bring back good material. Like the glass isn't clean, so it's not the light's not passing through in a true way, authentic and vulnerable way. And then there are other states which are further to the right, where there is even a joyful urgency about it, but it is full of tension because I want it to be good. And I think it would be absurd for me to deny that part of myself. I want to show people something that I'm proud of, and that seems to capture something essential. I do want that, but I also don't care. How does that sound to you, that last bit?
Well, that makes sense. And particularly that what I hear as you describe the process of fast, like being in it, being in the world and reaching reaching the flow state when you reach the ocean and everything quietens down and you see everything at once and then zooming into the finest detail and then it comes about. But there, the critic has no place. The moment the critic enters that space, it's over. So the fact that the editor, the critic, comes in later once the flow has produced its fruits. There is, I don't know, I do that. I record um, vocals and melodies and words come out. And after that, I listen. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes the whole thing is, well, I wanted to say perfect, and then I thought, but who am I to judge? Well, no, there's a feeling that you know when something is true or when it's not true. And I think when something is bullshit, it means it's not true. And there's only one truth, and there's only one falsehood in everything. And you know which is which. Um,
Mm.
and it's, I mean, that it depends from what you want to create, right? But I don't know. I think you and I want to um I think that is important. I don't know what that truth is. It's the unspeakable truth, it's the formless. It's when it comes from that which flows through us rather than from the egoic mind that wants to be seen, praised, and loved and accepted. When I create from ego mind, i.e., I want it to be good as soon as I begin. Like I wrestled with that yesterday when writing it. I kept noticing like, no, I'm writing this with already the output in mind of someone reading it and thinking, oh, whoa, that's really beautiful. And I'm really moved by that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to create from that. I want to create from beyond that, beyond the self, beyond the, and I don't know, when I edit stuff after, whether that's music or um, writing, or it's the truth that I'm looking for, like the true truth. It's the voice, and that sounds so,
That's okay. I understand.
I
I
want
know.
to say the voice of the universe speaking through me, but that's it. It's like not from my um yeah need to be accepted. It doesn't mean it can't be good, you know? Like, but if it's there's a part that can create from that. And I'm very dichotomous in weeding that out.
This is the trap we are in here because as soon as you start to describe that thing, um, it sounds clunky and awkward and silly. You know, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. So the eternal Tao is when the glass is clean and I'm just experiencing out of the center. And the more words I use to try and describe this, the further away I get from what we're actually trying to get across. And indeed, what I'm trying to get across in my work. And what's also fun I'm not sure how this applies or if it does at all, is in a slightly ironic way, observing the observer later. So different different perspectives on that primacy, with a sort of an understanding or a knowing behind it. Um, so I think up to a certain point, I was really prejudiced against the critic, because it represented an authority that I was arrogant about or sniffy about, or you're not allowed to touch my stuff. I'm an artist. But without it, nothing gets done. So to return to the beginning of our conversation, without the critic, nothing gets done. Nothing at least gets finished. So we have notebooks full of ideas and songs and letters and stories, and nothing actually ever gets completed because it requires a surrender to a critical mind that is demanding, is this actually any good? By that I mean, am I proud of it? Am I proud of it, regardless of what an audience may think? Although that does enter into it undeniably. Um, I remember listening to Rick Rubin's book on creativity, The Creative Act, perhaps it's called. And the bit that still stands out the most is that the first stage must be completely free, and any lunacy is allowed to be expressed. So that's the essential part of this process, it seems, because without it, we just come up with bullshit, contrived, borrowed, um, reworkings of previous stuff, and and that's, to me, stinks. It stinks because there's nothing to it. It's vapid. So, in order to create something that I'm proud of, I have to somehow completely surrender to boredom or non-thought. Walking really helps, so that I can actually observe life for what it is, rather than through these prisms of conditionality and like, what can I get out of it, sort of thing. And then and then a different part of the brain needs to be used to criticize it, and it's essential, and that requires courage. I think I have to do it. Also, it's very difficult to uh, embody the right perspective required to make sure that it's not shit. And so I need to use other people. I've used AI, certainly not to have it create my work for me, but to critique it, because it has a perspective, weirdly, that I don't have. And it's drawing on everything that's been created online, I suppose. I don't know what it's doing. I probably never will, but it undeniably provided a perspective, notwithstanding the amount of smoke it blows up my ass. And how, oh God, it's so good, Tom. Um, yeah, and the perspective of friends, trusted people, because they're seeing things that I'm not aware of, because they know me differently than the essential being that sort of um, whose work, I don't know how to finish that sentence. When I'm in pure flow state, it's like I don't have an identity, so I can't claim any. Uh, I can't claim any responsibility or acclaim for the stuff that gets produced. But I am happy that I've found a way to surrender to it, so that it does, because it brings so much joy to me.
I find it hard to contain myself to not interrupt you there because something occurred to me as you spoke. And it is that, is it true that it has to be good, because what is good? You cannot put good in a wheelbarrow. Is
Why a wheelbarrow?
is it possible to edit and critique your work from flow state to um what does proud mean? Do you need to be proud of your work? Because
Mm,
I don't think so. I don't I don't think so. I don't think you need to be proud of it. Or I don't know, there's something about, and this is what I'm exploring right now, right? So I think that I've become more interested in the question, is this true? Is this true? Then is it good? Or am I proud of it? Because someone asked me the other day if I was, what's the work I created that I'm most proud of? Is that you? I
no.
don't remember. Someone asked me that, but I'm like, I don't even know what that means, being proud of something, because I stopped seeing as anything that I create as meaning anything about me. It's I don't need to be proud of it because it's fleeting. I bring it into existence. I'm not saying that this is the way, right? But this is how I've gradually come to see it. Like, I ask it if it is ready, if anything needs to be changed. It will tell me. Sounds really vague, but I'm an animist, like I asked it. So I critique from it. I listen what wants to be changed, but I do not decide whether that's good or not good. Stop
Okay.
doing that. And so sometimes it tells me, no, it wants to be like this. That postcard, an example, it wanted to be like that. Am I proud of it? No, it was terrified to send it out into the world. But I don't own it. It's not mine. I am just the instrument, and this was true in this moment. I know that it will not be true anymore at some point, or, it will not resonate with me in the way that it did as I wrote it. However, it was, um, it's not mine. It's not mine. I don't need to decide whether it's good. And that's the thing, it often surprises, because obviously everybody else has a different opinion. There will be people that say, what is this contrived rubbish, or um,
Silliness. Mm.
this vague woo-woo bullshit, and some people write, this is what I am feeling right now, this resonates so much. And I've realized that there is freedom there, and and I'm not saying like, oh, just put any old shit into the world, and it's be up to the to gods to decide if it's good or not. Well, in a way, I am saying that, but it's when it says it's finished and it's ready to go into the world,
Okay.
then I send it into the world, whether I like it or not. it's it has been easier to not send it into the world, but this is my current play field. What happens if I post it anyway, if I share it anyway, if I send it anyway?
Let's
Surprising
talk about
things.
let's talk about those two words and maybe where they came from and what's wanted here. So the first one was something I can be proud of. to me, that says that the finished work has something precious about it. It's precious to me. Um, and I'm happy to tie it to the leg of a pigeon and let it fly off and hope it lands somewhere. But what was captured is precious. I'm pleased with it. And then, and I think that comes, all of that's coming after. On reflection, I am proud of it. Maybe proud's not the right word. And when I'm trying to create something that's good, what that means to me is that when, in my case, I'm reading it, it makes me laugh out loud, or it makes me weep, or it makes me so excited to share it. And it's pretty rare. It's only certain bits that create that depth of feeling. But that's good because I seem to capture an essence of something, of how, actually in this case, of how free I was feeling when it was inspired, how clean the glass was. And that to me is good. So I suppose what is good is a subjective thing. And what I'm proud of is the feeling I get once it's complete. And I then want to show it to people. And I'm okay with that word, I think, proud. But then, you, in asking those questions, like what do those words mean, you then gave an example of something that came out completely raw and unfiltered, which you were also happy with. So maybe it's the word happy that's better, or content. You're content with it. And like you said too, there was an edginess to it. You told me this before we started recording this. There was an edginess to it, something uncomfortable, that probably was also asking, am I allowed to share this? Is this allowed to be seen? Because it's so raw, maybe? And I think it's really rare that I can create something like that. I think you once, 10 or so years ago, asked me to write something, and it kind of came out like that. I just sat down and wrote it, and it seemed to be pretty much right first time. And then we have different forums too. And Substack is I suppose, a forum where anything is allowed, because all that's going to happen is it's going to be commented on. So you could just write bullshit and send it out there, and some people would probably love it. I'm not saying that what you wrote was bullshit. I'm saying that um, there is a lack of hierarchical critique there. It's thrown into the masses rather than it landing on someone's desk for it to be scrutinized for an audience. So yeah, we're in a different world now, I suppose. I heard a story yesterday of a man who was a stylist for very famous people in the 1990s, bands. And late in that period of his life, he was styling for a band that he claims were brilliant, and the album that he created were brilliant. Um, but they got so far ahead of themselves as to become arrogant. And no matter how good the work was, the world just said, no, we're not having it. And they were lost forever. No one knows who these people are now. I don't know why that applies. something to do with how I am while all of this is going on. Being vulnerable and unattached to any good or bad outcomes for this thing. Because my book is precious to me, it doesn't mean that anyone will like it. But because I think it's good doesn't mean anyone else will agree with me. That's a good conversation, wasn't it?
Indeed.
Enjoyed that very much.
Shall we continue this conversation
Now,
next week?
next week's good. Yeah,
Or-
next week's good.
yeah.
But will you stop recording now?
Yes.